Get started here. We will start out with our call to order. So if I could do a roll call.
Robert Jones.
Jenny Sisson.
James King.
So we have established a quorum this evening. I will take a minute here and have everyone look at the approval of previous minutes to approve those. And as anyone sees fit, if they would like to approve those meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, we have one motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I don't have to do roll call, correct, on that one?
That's correct. We
Thank
don't
you.
have, anyone attending.
We don't have anyone
virtually.
online, okay.
Yep, you're right.
We will then start with old business. That is if Mr. King here feels comfortable to review those as well.
Yeah, I read through them today.
Okay. So our first matter of business of our old business is V0618 2024-01, the findings of fact for 662 State Street. That's TE Incorporated, Jazz, is it Jazzveer Singh?
That's correct.
Okay. So if we could have you present on those.
Yes, thank you very much. And good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yes, thank you. Do want to start off, just pause, just kind of looking back at this last year. We've had a very full calendar with this body. This body has to review and analyze a lot of information and a lot of detail at that. So just thank you very much for your commitment, your work ethic, and your tenacity, and just being careful in the decisions that you make. So thank you very much. I just kind of wanted to start by saying that this evening.
Thank you for your good job on the presentation. Yeah, you've done a good job with that.
Absolutely.
We've had a lot of things we've had come across our plate this year with the petition, so it's a good sign for our community. So, just as Ms. Sisson had indicated, the first one, the V06182024-01. This was in regarding to a 4-point variance request. And just kind of to refresh memory on that, 3 of the 4 variance requests that were presented to this board were denied. So we had to separate out the findings of facts into 2 separate documentations. So the first one that I'll be presenting is the approval of that variance, the one variance that was presented. And then I'll follow up with the second one. We do need to make a separate vote after each one has been presented. But we'll start off by the first one that was approved by this board. So that variance request was that west property line setback. That setback requirement was 75 feet, and they requested for the primary structure to be 50 feet off of that public right of way. So after review and consideration and findings, there of the 5 criteria, the first one being that it is not harmful or injurious to public health and safety. The board felt like that the primary setback separation between the western property or wall there of the primary structure compared to the public right-of-way there off of Heritage Way was adequate from that minor arterial roadway. It is not a major arterial roadway, but they felt that there was no impact, negative impact on health and safety there. And that separation was going to be divided between an internal drive, additional landscaping, as well as a curb there. The second criteria was that there was not an adverse impact on the value of that property or the properties nearby. Your body made the decision that the difference of that 25 feet setback was not significant enough not to deny that this road, this property was unique in the fact that it is surrounded on all 4 sides by public roadway, and that all the other setbacks were being met on that property. The strict application of the terms of the ordinance, would it result into a a practical difficulty? And it was determined that it was not, and again, the uniqueness of that property being surrounded by 4 public roadways. There's also a stormwater management feature that was going to be required of that development. And so that all being considered, and the fact that the orientation of that building, it was more fitting to be in the location and facing State Street. So allowing that more shallow setback off to the west side was not a concern. Also, the requested variance was the minimum needs required. As presented, it was accepted that to allow that building configuration and the flow of the circulation of that property, that request could be accommodated. And last, there was not a correction of a hardship that was previously created by either the former or the current owner. This land has not been developed yet, so there was no hardship that needed to be corrected with this variance request. This was approved as presented with no conditions. So this, only the one of 4 is what would be then recorded. If you approve these findings of facts, would be allowed to go forward in the development of this project. So, any questions or anything about that?
I feel like it covers everything from our last
Yeah,
meeting.
The last,
Um,
spent a lot of time on that.
we did, and as far as how it's presented, I feel like it also covers, it reflects what we've covered within this finding here. Anything else?
Sounds like what I read.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would make a motion to, you're looking for a motion to.
If we then are done with discussion, I'll take a motion to approve the findings of fact
Yeah,
for, as presented. I'll just
Okay, yeah.
wrap it up with that.
Mhm.
I make a
Okay.
motion that we approve the finding of facts as presented, did a good job on that. We had a lengthy discussion at the last meeting on that, so that's my motion.
And do we have a second?
I guess I'll second since you're gonna do it.
I really can't, I don't think, but,
Second.
Yeah.
okay, so all the,
Second.
okay. So all those that approve, say aye.
Aye.
And then should we roll call on?
Jeff,
There's
should
no
they roll
need.
call being a
There's no
finding?
need for that. Oh, if there's a participant
No, virtual.
online.
Everyone's here
comes
in
in.
person.
Okay.
Yep, so we're good.
So for the first approval of, V06182024-01 is approved.
Thank you. I think that this board did a really nice job. I had participated virtually, listened in as things were weighed, and did a great job of breaking things down. So I think that these finding the facts were easy to be able to develop because of the due diligence that you did that evening. So thank you. The second part of that, these are the 3 of the 4 variances that were requested that were denied based on whether it was a staff analysis and report, it was material and information, data that's provided in our planning documents. But based on all of that and our standards that we have here for our community, there were 3 variances that were requested as well by the same petitioner regarding 662 West State Street. I do want to make note, Mr. King did make a great point that as development goes on to the east, should specify 662 West State Street. So those have been corrected in not only the documents that you will sign tonight, if you approve that, but is also in your Google Drive. So I did want to point that out. So thank you very much for bringing that to my attention. So these 3 variances, one is that they requested for the 3 driveways that they're proposing to the site to be greater than 30 feet, which is the standard for commercial driveway. They also were asking for a third entrance, a right-in only off of North Heritage Way, which would be the addition to those two entrance and exits that would have been naturally allowed on that per standard. And then also to allow the right-in only entrance to the site off of a minor arterial roadway. So those are the three variances that were presented, and based on the evidence that was presented at the last meeting, those variances did not satisfy the criteria. And so this findings of fact here outlines each of those 5 criteria and correlates 1, 2, and 3 below, reflective of those 3 variances that's listed above in those findings of facts. We will also record this as well. It'll run with the land as well. So it will not just be bound upon the current owner, it'll be for any and all future owners of the land. So the first one was about the fact that whether it was injurious to public health and safety. Point number 1 that the body had made is that the large crossing for pedestrians create a significant concern for the members here. The access management control document, which is our standard and our planning document that governs a lot of these standards that we implement here in our development, but felt like that it adequately addressed those pedestrian traffic issues, and that it would support good function within that property as is, and that there was no support or need for a deviation of those standards. Also, that a large uninterrupted openings was not safe for pedestrians, especially the close proximity that it had within that North Heritage Way and that roundabout there. Also, that it's a very tight space and that it could create some potential danger there for our pedestrians and our vehicular traffic. Also, the proposed entrance off that minor roadway was not ideal location. At some point, we may need to add in a second lane, which would then shorten that distance between the street and the intersection and that access point. And that simply that cuts and access points off of an arterial roadway create conflict points. So that is for the first criteria. The second criteria is whether or not the board felt like that it impacted negatively the value of that property or adjacent properties. The first one being that the wide openings of those driveway cuts could actually create a negative value or a negative impact on the value of nearby properties. Also, setting a precedent was very important to the board not to establish. So the concern is that setting a precedent for allowing that third entrance to the property could create some unintended, undesirable outcomes, for the town and those nearby property owners. And then also to allowing that third entrance, even though it was only a right in, right out, that set a precedent for that corridor, which is a very, it's an area that is soon going to be developed. We need to be mindful and careful as we allow that to be developed, and that it was determined that it's not ideal, not only for the town, but the best interests of our community. The third criteria was whether or not the strict application of the terms of the ordinance would result in a practical difficulty to that property owner. The access and management and control ordinance options that are already there, the board determined that the site layout and the property access would not create a difficulty, and that if we followed those standards, then the same needs would be met as far as to be able to intake all the anticipated traffic for trucks and or higher traffic use. Also, one of our standards is the high use commercial driveway standards, and that we felt that it was feasible on that site. Also, the subject property already has 2 access points off of the perimeter roadways that would be eventually, once it gets developed, the Rosegate Drive and Serenity Drive. So it's already receiving those access points, and it had the diagrams that provided showed that it supported good, solid functioning and operation with not needing that third access point. And the fact that it was following the lower classification hierarchy kind of chain that we have as a standard is that if it can be accessed off of a lower classified roadway, we desire that over then allowing then a minor arterial roadway access. The other is that the minimum standard or the minimum necessary was being asked. Again, 30 feet, curb to curb is the standard. They were seeking a 45 feet width and a 60 feet width. And the board felt like that they were not seeking what was minimally necessary, to achieve their goals. And also that third access point, was not warranted or supported by the traffic impact study that was submitted. There was no peak hours that were provided to the board. No data was given in support of needing a third or justifying a third entrance. And then, as well, the same for being off of that minor arterial roadway. There was no justification for that. And then the last criteria is regarding whether or not it was correcting a hardship. One of them is the first one. It actually was found to be an attempt to create a self-created hardship. If you recall, there was some staggering and kind of delay of some of that roadway improvement there where Rosegate and Serenity met up. That was going to be later developed by the owner, the developer of that larger parcel there nearby. And by that, then that was what reasoning that they had to have that third access point. But yet, if they wanted to make those improvements and connect those two, then that third entrance would not be necessary or would not need to be sought. So the other two variance requests, there was not a self-created hardship that was a part of those asked, but there were 4 additional final supports that the board did provide. I want to outline that. The traffic study did not support more than the 2 entrances as that peak hour data was not provided as required. Minimum access point separation between that street and intersections likely will not be met if we had to add that second lane into that roundabout. Standard driveway widths as in our planning document support safe and efficient flow for this site. And also direct access off of arterial roadway is discouraged by our planning documents. And if approved, we feel that there would be a negative impact then and precedents that we would be setting when there's other viable options available. So that was the decision for those 3 variance requests.
So I guess we'll have any further discussion. I feel like those are the exact, the reasonings of us not approving. I think you covered that in our very lengthy discussion last month.
Bettered that pretty well.
We did, and I feel like it's captured in here, and that's the most important piece, is capturing all of the findings of fact that was or was not presented.
Did the petitioner speak at this meeting?
Yes, they did, and they were very respectful. I do also want to let you know that they have come back with a proposal to be able to meet the standards. So,
Okay,
so we were
That's what I was
very
gonna
pleased
ask
to
you.
receive that. There was a slight variation that we wanted to have as far as for the median to be able to extend to the roadway, so there wasn't a loss in pedestrian traffic or give them an area to pause. But they quickly came back and they indicated that they'll be able to get something worked out for that as well before they do their final site development plan review packet. So,
their
yeah.
project engineer was here and also spoke as well,
yes. Aaron Carl.
which was good because Kyle was here. As a PE, they were able to kind of talk through a lot of those.
Good job
Those
of putting it
details.
together.
Oh, Denise, can I just make one comment?
Sure, absolutely.
Oh, thank you. The other thing I think with that median too is that actually that Denise just mentioned that we were kind of looking to not interrupt the pedestrian experience. It actually also brought forward some things we needed to clarify in both our UDO and our access management ordinance that, you know, those documents are both so huge. Usually, unless something comes up, we don't realize something is either missing or unclear. So that also brought up kind of some, well, do we require these to be landscaped and what does landscaping mean? So we're glad that outcome ended the way that it did.
Good.
Yeah.
And we knew that would be an evolving document as
Right.
things were presented.
Yeah, yes.
Well, good.
Yeah, it's great to see how both these boards work hand in hand and, work together, through all these.
So
Processes.
Hannah, will that be then on the next plan commission meeting?
Yeah, I have to ask Jeff, I'm pretty sure that the access management ordinance comes through you guys first and then to town council. I don't know if I was around when it was adopted, who it went through, but I'm pretty sure that's the usual function of it, since it's an amendment to an ordinance.
I believe it did. I remember reviewing that.
Okay, yeah. Then yeah, hopefully it should get up by next month. I know Denise and I have been going through that document, kind of trying to find anything we need to clarify or like the UDO. We don't use the access management ordinance nearly as much day to day as we do the UDO. But we're still kind of going through it like we would with the UDO to make sure if there's anything that needs amended or added or clarified or definitions, things like that, that we can have those in that document.
And I think we're going to be using it a lot, more, especially with
Yes, we definitely are.
the newer
Simple
developed
growth.
areas,
Mhm.
yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, well, thank you.
Mhm.
If there is no more than discussion on this. I will ask for the petition V 618 2024-1 of the 3 findings of fact that were not approved, which is the allow 3 driveway widths greater than the 30 feet maximum width allowance. The second being allow third entrance right in only to the site and allow this right in only entrance to the site off of a minor arterial roadway. Those 3 were not approved based on the facts given. If I could get an approval on this,
I make a motion to approve the findings of fact or what you just stated.
okay? Do we have
I
a
will second
second?
that motion.
So we have a second, and then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved.
All right.
And the last findings of facts that we have here before you this evening, it's petition B 618 2024 2. This petition was filed by Joshua and Kelly Ring. The property there is 459 East Water Street. And they had one variance request from developmental standards. This was pertaining to an accessory structure, which was going to be a 3-car detached garage on the rear of their property, that they were requesting a height variance. So the standard for their RC, which is their residential core conservancy district, there was the height, apologize on that. It's single family residential large lot zoning district for that particular parcel. And the height allowance is 15 feet for an accessory structure, and they were proposing to have the allowance up to 25 feet to accommodate their desire for this detached garage. Just kind of point out a little bit of fact that the primary structure was, depending on what portion of the home, is about 30 to 35 feet in height. So it was still going to be significantly subordinate in that use and height as well. So I think that was very key to this petition and this variance request. But the 5 criteria there, as outlined in the findings of facts, the first criteria is that it would not be injurious to public health and safety. It was determined by the board that it would not be harmful to the health and safety, well-being of our community. The use was for personal use only, and that all building code and UDO standards would be met as well. The value of the area of the adjacent properties was not deemed to be negatively impacted. Setback requirements all around all 4 sides of this structure was going to be met. There's about still a 5 to 8 feet difference, being lower than that primary structure. It matched heights similar to other buildings, homes within the area, and that it was going to set back 175 feet off of the public roadway. Also, it was determined that there was no pub or utility conflicts, and that they were, once this construction is complete, they're going to close off the existing driveway, relocate that, but all the standards for that request was met as well. And the last, that there was points made that there are large mature trees that would help kind of screen this if it felt needed, and that this property was surrounded on 3 sides by rec and open space and a large wooded area. The third criteria was that the strict application of the terms of the ordinance would result in a practical difficulty. The board felt that keeping to that standard of that 15 feet would not allow this property owner to fully enjoy the benefit of his, of the property. And that the standard, it was not necessary or reasonable to request it to keep to that 15 feet when that primary structure was significantly taller. Yeah. Once that's constructed. The fourth criteria is that the minimum relief necessary was being requested. That was agreed upon, that they felt that they were just that their ask was reasonable, being that it was lower than that primary structure. And at last, that this petition, this variance was not filed to correct already self-created hardship. This accessory structure was not built at the time of the petition or at the time of the hearing. So did not start construction until after a decision was made by this board. That there was no negative comments received by the town of Pendleton regarding this petition, and it was approved as presented with no conditions.
Any discussion? I think it hits everything we
Yeah,
went over.
yeah, pretty well covered.
So if I could make a motion to approve, go back to here, V 0618-2024-024, 459 East Water Street. That was Josh and Kelly Ring. If I could get a motion for approval,
I'll make a motion to approve
and
as presented.
I'll second.
we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved as presented. So afterwards, I will have you guys sign these with me here.
Thank you very
So
much.
we can move on now to new business, and I will let Denise continue presenting here.
Oh, all right. Well, this is variance B 07162024-01. We only have one new petition before us this evening. This is regarding property at 450 Old State Road 132. This property had a variance request back a couple months ago in May. It is actually regarding the same accessory structure, so we're going to discuss that. But just for those that were not at that hearing, and just for the record, some current use and site details, we'll quickly go over that a little bit. But this particular property is zoned single-family residential. It's a large lot district, SF1. The property is right under 0.9 or right under 1 acre at 0.92 acres. There's a 1-story ranch home, and it is used for homestead residential dwelling. And Jennifer, if you can go up to the zoning, let's see here, in the presentation. Yeah, there we go. Okay. There we go, right there. Okay. And this particular parcel, you see it's outlined in red there. You'll see a lot of green across the roadway, also surrounding it on 3 sides on the rear. That is all agricultural property. The yellow area that is identifying as that single family SF1 property. So you'll see that there's a mixture of ag properties as well as SF1 properties within that area. This property is surrounded by mature trees, and it is, again, then there's about 95 acre ag property there on all 3 sides of this particular parcel. The applicant, Henry Farrar, is here present this evening. He has complied with all filing requirements. He has complied with the notification requirements as well. The town of Pendleton has not received any feedback, whether positive or negative, regarding this petition. And so after kind of share what he is here seeking this evening, then if you want to ask myself or Mr. Farrar if any questions or anything, we definitely will welcome him to make any additional comments if he so chooses, to add to what is being presented tonight. And then after that, then I can share then the staff's report on that. So what the petitioner is requesting this evening, Jennifer, you can scroll down to the next page here. You'll see the subject property here. It's the same image that we provided the last time. Kind of outlines there, where the public utilities run on that property. Then you'll see about 125 feet off the public roadway. You'll start then that cement slab there in the gray, and then it's a accessory structure, a detached garage there, which is 36 by 56 long. And the variance that he requested at the last hearing was a height variance. The maximum for that zoning is 15 feet. He requested 17 feet, and that was approved 2 months ago. And since then, since our May BZA meeting, he's been working on just exploring options for construction plans, materials that would work well for him. And in doing so, had learned that exposed fastener, because he was going to go with a standing seam metal panel for the exterior material. And in learning, there's been a recent change in this past year that the Plan Commission had made a decision to differentiate between exposed fasteners and concealed fasteners. And what they had done in September of 2023 and making that distinction, they limited the zonings that they had a permitted right to be able to have this material. They can come in with the variance of developmental standards through this board, but as far as permitted right to be able to use this, it's allowed in, as far as residential properties, it's rural residential and agricultural properties. SF1 through SF4 residential properties, it would have to be a variance would have to be presented to be able to have the what we call exposed fasteners for that material. In looking at this, the cost of this exposed fastener for this wood barn would probably, I believe it was double or triple the cost. And he came to us and asked, he felt that there was a uniqueness about his property. It is a large single SF1. It's right at 1 acre. The accessory dwelling sits back 125 feet off the road. It is surrounded as indicated by pretty much almost all agricultural property. There are similar structures in the area, both to the west and to the east, and actually to the south as well. Properties that have this same material for their detached garages. And considering the surroundings and the uniqueness of this property, wanted to come before the board and ask for a variance to be able to allow this material. He has put in the foundation, he's put in the flooring for this, and he's put in the framing for this. But we want to make sure that you are aware that he has not purchased this material. He is awaiting your decision before moving forward with any purchase decisions, for this. So if you want to turn to the next slide there, Jennifer, these are the same elevation views. He has no intentions of changing this. It has that wainscot 36 inches off the ground. It's got those 2 windows up front. It's got the two-tone coloring of that. And looking at that, this is pretty much what you're going to see off of the roadway. We're going to go to the next slide and I'll show you what how these bolts are actually coated, and these bolts are coated. See that little brown area in the red. So the red barn is an example of what an exposed standing seam metal barn would be expected to look like. down at the bottom right corner there, it's kind of a brown background. You'll see the bolts there. They're coated in color to match the siding. So his would be coated in black and or white, depending on the placement on the garage there. So you'll see down below what we would consider a concealed fastener on the right, and then what would be exposed fastener to the left, though. So we are working on, and just like Hannah Rose had just mentioned here, we're finding that there's new things that we need to add to that UDO. And one of these things that we've considered is adding more imagery, some examples to be able to help guide the development and decisions and so forth. So then that way, some of those terms are well understood. So, if you have any questions at this point before we provide our staff analysis, I can pause and answer any questions that you have for myself or for the petitioner.
Question on the bolts. I take it since they're painted, they would not rust over course of time
Yeah,
if we approve this.
yes, I think it is coated in a fashion that they will not
They will not
rust.
rust.
That is
Okay.
So
correct.
it's galvanized and coated just like the
Yes.
siding itself.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. Yes. Yes, good question.
I guess it would be nice to hear, to have you present
Okay.
through, and then we can have some discussion
Yeah,
regarding,
absolutely. Perfect.
the various points.
The function of the planning staff is to analyze the petition against our approved relevant planning documents and ordinances, as well as any existing conditions or variances placed upon that site to present facts and analysis only. And so based on that analysis, we provide the following comments. Variance, we feel that the variance will not pose an endangerment on the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of our community. All setbacks, bulk use, maximum impervious surface standards are being met by and with this accessory structure that's being proposed. The fasteners will be tipped in the same color as the exterior metal panels, which will seem to be a cohesive look, to the structure, with that product also matching accessory structures of nearby properties to the east and to the west. This is a post frame accessory structure with the cement floor and foundation, which will feature those two front facade windows, that two-tone exterior we talked about, and then also that wainscot there, 36 inches above ground, which will give some enhanced aesthetics to this building. That front wall, the proposed accessory structure is to sit and will sit and does already sit 120 feet off that public right of way. Large mature trees will help kind of screen this area to provide any natural screening, but then also too that it is fully surrounded by either SF1 similar properties as well as ag properties there. The variance was not filed to correct a hardship. The materials have not yet been purchased, and the Indiana building codes, they have already submitted their building permit, and those building codes have been met, and all other developmental standards of the UDO will also be met. That is our report. If I'm
So-
going to go ahead.
Do you want us to open it up for discussion amongst
Yes,
the board?
that would be great.
Okay.
As I said.
Um, So I do have a clarification question. This parcel at one point was considered rural residential before we went
Yes.
through.
Yes, we had a zoning map change in
Yep.
2021, and so then that was updated to SF1 property. So yes, it was, and he did when, so it was zoned differently, as well as then when he started looking into this accessory dwelling, it was a permitted material at that time as well. So that it was kind of a discovery after he started looking into his
So he's-
construction kit.
Trying to leverage this property as it would have been originally, and it is unique in its size, location, the manner in which it's set back, And this is really a utilitarian building. It's not an accessory dwelling unit to live in. That, to me, there's a differentiation, and maybe we need to differentiate that more. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back to that UDO and see how we really have parsed that definition out.
Yeah. Yes, and you are correct. In October 2023, Plan Commission also had made the exterior material requirement applicable to the accessory structures. So at one point for probably good 2+ years, those exterior material requirements and standards did not apply to accessory structures. So that was a recent change as well.
And I think, again, when you change something, you can't think through all the variations. I think it was in place to make sure that people start using that on their main dwellings as well. And then, like we've discussed, the commercial properties, we did not want that. But this is, to me, this isn't, has that more industrial utilitarian use as presented and as we approved for the functionality of the building back in May. And it was not all that long ago considered rural res, which this fits in the use for rural res. There's not development around it. It's cornfields. And the property has trees. I think the argument is very compelling, is my opinion. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what the rest of the board thinks.
It's a barn, right?
Yeah.
Right.
On a farm.
And that we generally said in the future, we know this is rural residential
Yes.
as we, but it will always have that amount of land with the trees developed, so it's not being squeezed into a small lot, even if it was or was not rural residential.
Real factor is that it is rural there, but at some point in time that will probably change on 95 acres agriculture around that, and as the community grows, the likelihood of that changing is probably significant. And so I think you have to look at the standard, like this is for your garage on that. Let's say if you get surrounded as time goes on, some commercial development, as you set a standard, that commercial development siding, you may not allow the exterior molding of that you would here for, say, your garage on your about 1 acre property being surrounded by cornfield or bean field at this point in time. But that will probably change as time goes on.
Just as
Right.
we've seen in that area,
Yeah.
essentially,
Right.
some of those farms that now have, well, I know the Mingles farm has,
Yeah.
the falls. We just have to
Right.
stop and think,
Yeah.
touching it now, so it,
To me, I think the big factor would be there again, it's residential at this point in time.
Yeah.
And we can't speak what's gonna happen in the future, that if it's commercial, then your standards for the siding, what if we do approve this for this particular parcel, then it wouldn't necessarily be applicable for commercial development that might come forward down the road.
or even other accessory dwelling units, which
Yeah.
most of the time have an intent for a living dwelling. Is that what I want to call it? And not
Accessory
necessarily
dwelling.
a utilitarian use.
And Bob, if I could just make a comment on the development of that area. I mean, we are working on updating our comp plan, probably starting next year. And I think that area has always been slated to, if it were to develop, it would be some type of residential. I don't think we'd ever allow commercial along that corridor simply because the roadway can't handle it. And it's quite expensive to, bring it up to a standard that can handle commercial traffic. So I think, in that being said, if there were to be any development, it would likely just be residential.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Uh-huh.
given that information, it's, to me, no different than as you presented, there's similar, lots and structures in existence there. I really don't have anything more to vet through on this.
Yeah.
Any other comments out here or online?
Okay.
Petitioner, have any comments? Mhm.
Okay, so then, I will make a motion. Let's get the number back here, sorry. I don't memorize the numbers there. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve V 0716-2024-01 as presented in regarding to using the exposed fasteners. And that is the only thing additional on that we are approving tonight. Everything else was previously approved. So this is the single family residential large lot zoning district at 450 West State Road 132, Henry Fard. If I could get a motion for approval.
Make a motion to approve.
Do I have a
as
second?
presented.
I will second that motion.
And we have a second, so all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved.
All right,
You're
great.
still not putting the bathroom in there. though,
Thank you
huh?
very much.
No.
Man,
The
I'll
house,
stay.
the house is 10 foot away.
Too close.
He's got that corner too.
Before
Yeah, that
you,
cornfield,
we
there you
can, we
go.
can dismiss them, but before you adjourn, there was one piece I'd like to be able to answer, follow up from our last meeting.
okay, so do
but a
we want
question.
that on the record or do I want to
Um,
adjourn?
It's up to you. We can put it on the record. It's fine. I just wanted to get some clarifications and follow up to a question that you had asked at the
Yes.
last meeting.
We'll keep it
and-
on record then.
okay.
Since it's
right.
already on record from the last
From the last-
minutes,
yeah,
we'll
that's
want
what
it
I-
to carry forward.
Okay.
So we will continue. If you guys want to excuse yourself, you're more than welcome here.
We'll do the
Thanks,
same
guys.
thing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Good luck with the building.
Once they're done, but thank you so much for all your work and help on this. Thank you so much. Good seeing you. Have a good night. So. Okay.
So I will have you continue, Denise.
Yes, so I apologize, the last meeting I was participating virtually and I was on my phone. I was having issues with being able to speak and to get through here, but Mrs. Sisson, she had raised a question. She had presented some thoughts, and we had some discussions a few months ago about whether or not we can explore the ability for this board to be able to kind of exercise some solvency review and check. And so I had spoke with Jeff Graham. It might have been few weeks prior to this that last meeting in June. And he gave me some guidance, clarification, and advice, and then also took a look at our UDO to see if we had any protections that way and what other protections we can exercise to be able to resolve the concern, which is a legitimate concern, the fact that if this board does then approve a conditional use, that could be through a land use variance, or it could be a conditional use variance and or a variance of and from the developmental standards that we have in the UDO. What happens then if that property owner, because of the fact that that variance typically survives and runs with the land, that if they don't act upon that, if they don't finish it adequately or sufficiently, or perhaps then the way in fact that how they approach that conditional use is not in accordance to what is allowed and so forth. So considering that maybe there could be some solvency checks, we can look into some of the background information of this petitioner, whether it be financial, it could be reference checks and so forth. And what can we do to resolve that concern that could be potential? Hopefully we won't, face that, but yet, with development and so forth, that can happen at any given time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that other, communities have faced this as well. So we kind of looked back and I checked with Jeff Graham, our legal counsel. And, he explained first off is that with the variance and conditional use requests being the nature that they are a recorded document, it does run with the land, then those checks make it difficult for us to be able to do that.
Okay.
In doing so as well, doing that type of due diligence and research and so forth. If we did that for our variance conditional use requests, we'd probably have to likewise keep it the same for any planning type of document. That could be in a rezone request, that could be in a primary plat, secondary plat, or site development review as well. Requiring those financials and so forth. Now, fortunately, and I know Jenny, you serve on the Planning Commission, you're familiar with the bonding processes that we do have on the Planning Commission side on those type of developments. And we don't have that ability for the variance request and for this type of body approvals. But we do have a little bit of protection. And what we do have is through the UDO, we have an expiration that is earmarked. So if those conditional uses, that development does not occur within 3 years from the approval, then it's deemed void.
Okay.
So I do know that I'm sure that we would have to go through a process, and that's something that we would need to get with legal on as far as how do we make and materialize that voidance? You know, do we have a public hearing? Does that sound right, Jeff, that we'd have a public hearing to then present say a petition by the staff or findings of facts to negate that previously issued variance?
Yes, everyone that was affected in the first case would have to be notified of the revocation.
Okay, and then if that owner had moved on, we would also notify the current owner of that property as well. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
One thing that we can do though also is that we are allowed, now we have a minimum of a 1-year period. However, we can, as a board, make the decision to have a condition that lowers that time period of 3 years. So minimum of 1 year,
Okay.
up to 3 years. So let's say that if you felt that the development might be 18 months or 2 years, that if they did not act upon what the variance that they were approved, then we could go through that process to void out that variance. Then we also have the unsafe building ordinance that we would fall on,
Okay.
unsightly premise ordinance, and then also any zoning ordinance violations processes. We can exercise those as well for protections for us. The other thing I did kind of read on, and Jeff, this is something that I apologize, I was going to check with you yesterday at our meeting, and I didn't do that. If you record these findings of facts, they run with the land.
Correct.
But if they are not recorded, they only file the current owner that had requested that variance. Is that correct?
Yeah, technically, the findings of fact always run with the land. But the problem is that the new owner then would have a potential lawsuit against the town if those findings of fact would adversely affect them when they purchase the land. So it's always best to record them.
Those. Okay. Okay. So we would not want to make any determination to decide to hold off on a recording if we wanted to keep it to that current owner. Okay. All right. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So probably, from my best understanding is we would want to implement and exercise our conditions that we apply then to any variance that we grant then from this body.
So what's in the devil
When we wouldn't.
exercise?
So if it was say like this particular case, this is going to be something that's going to, they're gonna have that confidence that this is going to be developed. I think a lot of the concern was more for, say, if it was a conditional use, it was someone that might come into a tenant situation where they're getting a conditional use within a space that they lease and they may not own, they may not have that level of ownership, they relocate, they move on, we've approved it for XYZ, say, to be able to have a pet store or some sort, but then now they've left the premise and.
So they never did it,
Mhm.
so follow through.
So if they never did If they did not remain on that property, if they did not, they make those improvements that we had asked them to do. We,
Automatically.
if they don't do it timely within 3 years, it automatically avoids it. Well, I say not automatically, I say that loosely. We'd have to go through a process of notification, but to void that, but we do have that ability to do that. But if the body did decide that they wanted to shorten that length of time, they can't shorten it less than 12 months, but they can up to 3 years.
So in this case with the external fasteners, if they decide, hey, it's really not that much more expensive, we're gonna go ahead and put seamless, internal fasteners on it. And then down the road, somebody wants to build something else on there. Is it recorded? Are they gonna see, hey, we
Yes,
could use
it-
external fasteners if we want to, or
Yes.
does that nullify what we just decided on?
Well, I think that would
think
nullify
that-
it if it's something else, because we only approved on
On the one
the
building?
one
On one
building.
building, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes,
But
it's
it-
just for the one structure.
It really, the thought process of, during times of growth, commercial properties kind of switch hands, come and go, and it was just a way to ensure that what we approve, we're going to be able to see it,
To
that
finish
they
it.
are going to see it through.
Mhm.
I just felt like there was, to me, some cloudiness, and I wanted to make sure, because I will say it's similar, but not exact, when we had, developers in 2009, when everything collapsed, and then, so this is just scaled down, these
Mhm. Yeah.
decisions. It's not some big development, but we are starting to get some, requests in here for variances that just, my red flag came
Mhm.
up, that I thought, ooh,
So historically, the town found it good. Our attempts to get that.
yeah, and I just,
Yeah.
I see as we grow, this clarification, will be extremely beneficial to this board and to staff. So I thought, I'm gonna post it
Yeah.
now,
That was it.
as
question.
we're pretty busy on this board,
Mhm.
more than really ever.
Yeah, 1 to 3 petitions on average a
Yeah.
month, so, yeah.
And I want to make sure our decision has been kind of vetted for all of these things.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you
And
have-
I appreciate this follow-up to this extent.
Yes, yeah.
Makes me feel better.
Yeah, yes, so, and if we see in time if things, come up, we'll definitely keep you informed and, yeah,
Okay.
can do things, so, yeah. That's all I have, think.
Does the board have anything else? Anyone online have anything else? Well, I appreciate that extensive follow-up,
Yeah, no.
Yeah, thank you for
absolutely.
that.
No,
and I
no.
won't promise
You
that'll
do
be
it.
the last I.
No,
Throw out
just
a-
like Anna Rose said, when things come up, I mean, it puts it, to where, we, get good answers, get good, results, and we learn in the process. So no, thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
As much as I think we'd like to think that we've memorized all 260 pages of our code, we do find new things every day.
Yes, every day.
And you don't have a crystal ball, so you want to get it
I
right.
don't
5 years down the
know.
road, think, well, I wish we'd have thought about that at the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
It's too
right.
late,
Yes.
so you do the best you can with what you've got. But
Mhm.
these kind of questions are good that might help us
Yeah.
out in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Well, if no one has anything else to add, we can adjourn.
Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right. Thank you very much.